What's up, boys? This is the bronze match between Jeff and Blair from the OG tournament we did back at WeWork the first time. Instead of going at the start of the game, I should go back to the beginning. Um, Real interesting game. I'm trying to remember who was white here, and I believe Blair was white and Jeff was black. And this game got off the rails pretty quick. So we start with what's technically Nimzowitsch something because of this move right here, that knight c6 move, but it ends up transitioning into a French because you get these two moves, and this is just the French but with knight f or knight c6 earlier instead of later. So you could easily get this if you went, you go e4. No, it's not letting me do it. Come on. You could get this. And it's the exact same order, but that didn't happen. So instead we got the exact same thing from right here, which is the same thing. Now a couple book moves here. A pretty simple one is this. And this is important, and you'll see why in a second. Blair played f4 here, which is a problem because after takes, and you can keep taking if you want to. All the major pieces are the same except that white has one less pawn. And so one of the important reasons of why instead of f4, this move is important because after the same variation, there's no takes right here because the knight can take back. So that's why you can't do that. Interestingly enough, though, Jeff misses that. Instead, he develops his knight, which it's not that the knight move itself is a blunder. It's that it's a blunder because you're not getting the pawn. So a couple different options here. The best one is to take right here, and then that way you can focus on potentially defending your pawns. So theoretically, Engine says this is the best move for black, but white's now doing okay here. Even if you take here, you're double threatening this pawn. The safest way to defend it is just this move, making sure this is double defended and this is defended as well. Or you can just alternatively push here because this is still defended by the bishop. So none of that happens. We get in this position, and Blair makes a move which makes sense because you want to kind of get pieces out. He moves his queen right here. Obviously, the problem with that is what Jeff ended up doing, which is once you take this pawn, you're down the pawn again. Black has a lead in development, and black's going to have the tempo because you're going to need to have your queen moved. So the problem is there's only a couple moves you can do. First, you can decide to take here, and it actually says that's not the best, and black can even take back with the pawn and says that's the best move. The other alternative, really the only alternative, because you need to also keep this piece defended, is you have to move your piece right here. Because it'd be nice if black was able to take this and then get the queen off of covering the c2 square, but obviously that doesn't work for black. So the best move is here. The only problem is Blair was not looking at this fork. He was looking at a way to get out of the attack while defending this piece, and he just missed that he needed to go here. So he moves to e3 instead. The fork happens, takes, and now Jeff is at the queen. Now this is where there's a slight difference here. It doesn't make a huge difference. It wants you to take here, and after takes here, you can go here. And that's slightly better, but again, the material's basically the same. What ends up happening is very, very similar, and you wind up in this position, where the queen or the king moves up, and the queen is still on d8, and this is technically better for black because on black's turn, the ideal move is here, which is just a foul move. You're threatening this bishop, so you have to get the bishop into the game, but also you're never going to get these pieces out because there's never going to be a great situation where you can move and not lose the rook, or where you try to move the rook and not run into some shenanigans where you get demolished. So that, is suspicious. So takes, and this is the second best move, basically. It says it's best. When you play the other move, it says it's best too. This is so interesting because on move 10, you get 2 forced moves in a row, which is pretty rare, just because things really have to go not well for one side to get that happening. Blair, you did actually a very good job getting to a lot of the right positions here to make sure you come out alive. This is crazy, where this is, so Blair does this move, bishop c4, and literally you can just take right here, and black can't do a darn thing about it. It's just a free piece. So you know the position is bad when bishop c4 is excellent and it literally just loses a piece for nothing. You know it's bad in that case. So Jeff doesn't take it. He can still take it right here. Okay, and now Jeff does this forcing move, getting you over here. Very suspicious, not where you want to be. You can't take now, unfortunately, because obviously I can just take back here. But this is where it gets very interesting, and where Jeff makes a crucial mistake is a5 wasn't played, a6 was played, threatening to do this and start pushing the pieces away. Blair does this move before, trying to push this bishop away, maybe gain some space, maybe you can get some pieces out of there. Crazily enough, this is actually a mate in 10 sequence, but that's not real. Like, you can't actually find mate in 10s. And then Jeff makes the fatal mistake, queen e4 check, allowing Blair to just literally take the queen for free. Technically speaking, material's still equal at this point. I'd probably rather be white because of the fact that while black has 3 extra pawns for white, I think I'd rather have the extra piece. And even if an engine can play this perfectly, I probably can't. So the only good move basically is this move, technically speaking. And then Jeff does this move, which is not that it's so terrible. It's just that you're going to lose material as black here. And then your pawn advantage will be not so good. So what the engine recommends here actually is a really cool move. Take this pawn, lose the bishop, but then you win this bishop. And basically at the end of the day, there's 2 minor pieces for white, 1 minor piece for black, and there's only a 2 pawn difference. And at this point, white's gonna roll over. What ended up happening is almost as good, which is where you take first, then the rook takes, then you move out of the way, which is pretty similar. The only difference is white just hasn't won this pawn. But it ends up being almost the same exact situation. A few more moves go on. Unfortunately, Jeff blunders another piece. Threatening the rook right here, you got to get it out. Probably just move it back. Or the next best move, rook d5. Kind of make sure you're defending this pawn because you can't move here because the knight will take it. You have to do this to defend the pawn. Unfortunately, Jeff goes here and blunders another piece, and now white's advantage is material and pretty strong. The game kind of goes on. Now, this is technically kind of a blunder because you're just sacrificing the rook for the exchange, basically, but it ends up working out because you get to this point, and at the end of the day, you're winning. And so you can even do this, and you have to take because there's a back rank threat that white is making, so, take here, and you got nothing. It's 2 pieces, and white's going to win. So that doesn't happen. Jeff does a really interesting move, which instead of taking, he goes right here first, which kind of makes sense because the goal is, well, if you can get this rook off of protecting the knight, then maybe you're gonna be okay. Maybe you can win that knight. The only problem is there's a couple moves to stop it. First, you can just do this, which will protect the knight. Second of all, you can even do this if you really wanted to. And then you can stack up here if you want to. You can take over here if you want to. At the end of the day, the problem is there's still just 1 less piece. And the best move, of course, is this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't quite work. There was a variation I wanted to look at here. Rook d2. You can't go e4 because you might think, well, I can move this piece out of the way, and then if I do that, I'm going to lose, which wouldn't be great. But the solution to this is that you can just take the piece right here, and then you walk right back in, and there's no more pin. So then that doesn't work. We basically reached, let's see, this point, not this point. We reach this point, and the game is basically over. Black has to take here, because if you try to go over here, attack the piece, there's just an exchange right here. This is a forced move. White's 2 pieces up, and every variation, white ends up 2 pieces up, and the game was over, and Blair got 3rd place.